What's going on, ladies and gentlemen, it's Daniel and welcome back to our video. Today, I'll be taking a look at the intros for the 2025 Cookout 400 at Martinsville Speedway. So anyways, let's go ahead and just jump straight into it. We're going to start by talking about the one car for Trackhouse Racing. This one's going to be driven by Ross Chastain. Ross Chastain's coming off of having not the best performance at Homestead Miami Speedway as he finished outside of the top 30 in 31st place. He looks to turn around this weekend at a track where Trackhouse has shown some good speed in the past, including at the time where he had the Hail Melon move in 2022. But outside of that, it's been a little bit up and down in recent years. He'll look to turn around this weekend and run really well this weekend at Martinsville. Up next, top of the two car for Team Penske. This one's going to be driven by Austin Cindric. While Austin Cindric did get a speeding penalty at Homestead, he did have solid speed and ran inside the top 10. And I feel like the two cars have been a little bit quicker to start 2025. He comes to a track where he's been hit or miss in the past. He'll look to kind of turn the momentum around and run really, really well and look to maybe get a top 10 finish this weekend and see where the speed and pace can continue for the Team Penske cars at this track as they've had a lot of success. Up next, up with the three car for Richard Childress Racing. This one's going to be driven by Austin Dillon. Austin Dillon's coming off of having a pretty solid run at Homestead where he finished inside of the top 15 and ran up front at points of the race as well. He comes to a track where back in 2022, he actually had a top 5 run and ran up front most of the night, and it seems like the three car might be turning the cliff a little bit. But I'm not sure how RCR cars are going to be, so it might be a little bit of struggle for him this weekend at Martinsville. Up next, top of the 4 car for Front Row Motorsports. This one's going to be driven by Noah Gragson. Noah Gragson's had an up and down start to 2025. While the cars have shown some good pace and speed at times, they've also been a little bit inconsistent at times as well. Noah Gragson's had some decent success at Martinsville Speedway in the past. We'll see if he can continue that trend, see if the speed can be there, and we'll see if Noah Gragson can have the pace and speed to maybe get himself a top 10 finish this weekend at Martinsville. Up next, up with the 5 car for Hendrick Motorsports. This one's going to be driven by Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson is coming off of having a win at Homestead Miami Speedway, picking up his first win of the 2025 year in the NASCAR Cup Series and his 30th career Cup Series victory. I expect Larson to be somewhat of a factor. The 5 car has been very, very good at this track. He won the spring race back in 2023, and Hendrick has won the last 3 spring races here. So I look for Larson to have a good chance and opportunity to get that second straight victory of 2025. Up next, up with the 6 car for RFK Racing. This one's going to be driven by Brad Keselowski. Brad Keselowski's been off to an abysmal start in 2025, as I don't even think Brad scored a single top during the first 6 races of the year. I look for Brad to try to turn it around and run a lot better. They just haven't had the pace and speed to be major factors to start this year. We'll see if Brad Keselowski can turn it around and run really good at Martinsville. Up next, up with the 7 car for Spire Motorsports. This one's going to be driven by Justin Haley. Justin Haley had a very solid run at Homestead Miami Speedway and finished inside of the top 10 in 10th place. We come to a track where he's had some decent success, but has never been a major factor at this track. If Spire could bring the pace and speed, though, I could see him having a chance to maybe at a top 15. If they could bring it, we'll see what he can do, and we'll see if they have good speed and pace this weekend at Martinsville. Up next, up with the 8 car for Richard Childress Racing. This one's going to be driven by Kyle Busch. After a really strong start to the year for Kyle, he had a bad run at Homestead, finishing outside of the top 20. And we're going to a track where with RCR, they haven't been too great. I think it's going to be a little bit of a struggle for Kyle Busch, unfortunately, to be a major factor. I think the momentum's been gone after the start of the season, and I think the bad momentum is kind of coming their way, unfortunately. I think it's going to be a little bit of struggle for Kyle Busch this weekend in the NASCAR Cup Series race at this track. Up next, up with the 9 car for Hendrick Motorsports. This one's going to be driven by Chase Elliott. Chase Elliott had not the best performance in Homestead, where he kind of got outperformed by all his teammates throughout the event. Luckily for Chase, the last time he ran here, he had one of the fastest cars in the field, and I believe led over 100 laps. He is going to be a factor to win this weekend because Chase Elliott's been really good at Martinsville. He won here back in 2020, and has come close to winning more races at this track in recent years. I think he'll be a factor, definitely to be a contender here at Martinsville. Up next, up with the 10 car for Kaulig Racing. This one's going to be driven by Ty Dillon. Ty Dillon's been a little bit better than I thought he was going to be to start 2025, but still ran outside of top 20 all day long at Homestead. And I think that's going to continue because Kaulig cars have not been that strong at these types of tracks. I still think they got work to do on the short track program. We'll see what Ty Dillon can do this weekend at Martinsville Speedway. Up next up, the 11 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. This one's going to be driven by Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin had a pretty good run at Homestead where he finished inside of the top 5 and looks to come to a track where he's had a lot of good success. But he has not won this track since 2015. That could change this weekend, however, as Denny Hamlin's been really strong at short tracks where tire wear is probably going to matter, where there's probably going to be a softer tire this weekend. We'll see if the pace and speed can be there for Hamlin, where he can definitely be a factor at this track. Up next up, the 12 car for Team Penske. This one's going to be driven by Ryan Blaney. Despite the speed that Ryan Blaney has shown the last 3 weeks, he hasn't had the finishes to show for it. He's looking to turn around and not have an engine failure for the 3rd time in the last 4 weeks. I think he will have a car capable of winning, though. He's been really good here in Martinsville. He's won the last 2 fall races at this track and has one of the best average finishes in the field. I look for Ryan Blaney to have a pretty good car and be a pretty big contender for the win this weekend at Martinsville Speedway with the 12 team. Up next up with the 16 car for Kaulig Racing. This one's going to be driven by AJ Allmendinger. I don't think AJ is going to be a major factor for the win, but the last couple weeks he's had really good speed as he's had back-to-back top 10 finishes with a 7th place finish at Vegas, or 9th place, and a 7th place finish at Homestead. He looks to continue building about momentum and running really well, but I'm not expecting much from the driver of the 16 car this weekend at Martinsville. Up next up with the 17 car for RFK Racing. This one's going to be driven by Chris Buescher. Chris Buescher isn't leading last, but he's finishing inside a top 10 on a week-by-week basis, and they're executing and doing a really good job at the end of these events. I look for Buescher to have a contention for a top 10. He's been hit or miss at this track in the past. We'll see what he can do this weekend at Martinsville with the RFK team. Up next up with the 19 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. This one's going to be driven by Chase Briscoe. Chase Briscoe had a really good run at Homestead where he ran inside the top 10 and finished in 4th place. And we're going to a track where Chase Briscoe, when he drove for Stewart-Haas Racing, he ran really, really good here. I think he's going to be a factor for the win. I think the 19 car is going to have the pace and speed, and we could see Chase Briscoe potentially pick up his 3rd career Cup Series win. I think he's got a good chance and opportunity to do that for sure this weekend at Martinsville Speedway with JGR. Up next up with the 20 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. This will once again be driven by Christopher Bell. Christopher Bell, after a really strong start to the year, winning 3 straight races, the last couple weeks have been a little bit of a downturn spiral, but I think there's a chance he could turn it around. He wasn't as good in the spring race, but he's been always good in the fall race here. I look for Bell, though, to show some pretty good speed. The Joe Gibbs cars are historically really, really good at this track, and I think that he'll have a great chance and opportunity for sure to maybe get a top 10 or maybe get his 4th win of the year this weekend at Martinsville. Up next up with the 21 car for the Wood Brothers. This one's going to be driven by Josh Berry. Josh Berry finished inside the top 20 at Homestead Miami Speedway with the Wood Brothers. Luckily for him, we're going to Martinsville. A really good track for him historically as he won the Xfinity race here back in 2021. I look for Josh Berry to be a factor for a top 10 and maybe even a top 5 as well. He's had a much better start to the year than the Wood Brothers showed the last couple seasons. I think that speed will continue for Josh Berry for sure at Martinsville. Up next up with the 22 car for Team Penske. This one's going to be driven by Joey Logano. Joey Logano has scored a lot of stage points this year, but he is still looking for his first top 10 finish of 2025. The first defending champion, to not have a top 10 through the first 6 races of the year. This could be a track that turns it around because Logano's been really, really good here. I think he'll have a chance and opportunity to finally get that first top 10 of 2025 this weekend at Martinsville. Up next up with the 23 car for 23XI Racing. This one's going to be driven by Bubba Wallace. Bubba Wallace was really fast in the spring race last year in 2024, and he's been off to a much better start in 2025 compared to prior years. I look for Bubba to be a factor for the win in all honesty. He's been really good at this track, and I think the 23XI cars have been showing a lot of great speed to start the season, especially Bubba, who currently sits 7th in the points. He's got a great chance and opportunity. He looks to pick up his first win on an oval and first win in the Cup Series since Kansas in 2022. Up next up with the 24 car for Hendrick Motorsports. This one's going to be driven by William Byron. William Byron's been having such a good season that he's 36 points above Kyle Larson in the standings for the points lead at this point. He's been off to a strong start in 2025, and I expect that to continue as he's the defending winner of the spring race at this track. I think William Byron will be a major factor to get it done. I think Byron is going to have the pace and speed, and the Hendrick cars will continue their strong start to 2025 at this track. Up next up with the 34 car for Front Row Motorsports. This one's going to be driven by Todd Gillen. Todd Gillen had not the greatest performance at Homestead Miami Speedway, but I think the pace has been there generally for the number 34 team throughout the early portion of the season. Though they just got to kind of execute and do a little bit better when it comes to finishes. If they can do that, I could see Todd Gillen having a chance and opportunity to get a top 10 or top 15, as he's been historically pretty good at this track driving for the 30A car in the last couple years. Up next, I have a 35 car for 23XI Racing. This will once again be driven by Riley Herbst. Now, unlike Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick, Riley Herbst has been struggling in the early portion of this season. He is looking for a turnaround. I think he could have the chance to do that because he's been good here in Xfinity competition, but I'm not really sure. I'm not sure what's going on with the 35 team. There's still a lot of work to do. You gotta remember he's a full-time rookie, but I still think he needs to start showing a little bit more improvement here very, very soon. Up next, up at a 30A car for Front Row Motorsports. This will once again be driven by Zane Smith. Zane Smith has been having a couple really strong performances the last couple of races, and I look for Zane Smith to be a factor for a top 10 considering how good he's been here in the Craftsman Truck Series in the past. He also showed, I think, some good speed the last time we were here with Spire Motorsports. We'll see what he can do, and we'll see if Zane Smith can have a strong run this weekend at Martinsville. Up next, up with the 41 car for the Haas factory team. This will once again be driven by Cole Custer. Statistically, Cole Custer has been the worst full-time driver so far in 2025 in the Cup Series, which kind of were expecting him to be in the bottom of the points. I think Cole Custer could turn it around, though. The Ford's been very, very good at this track, and I think realistically he will get himself maybe a top 25 finish. Outside of that, the bad season has not been going very well for him, and I think he's going to be still struggle throughout a lot of races throughout the season. Up next, up with the 42 car for Legacy Motor Club. This will once again be driven by John Hunter Nemechek. After a strong start to the year, John Hunter Nemechek's been struggling a little bit farther as we've gotten into the year. He's been qualifying pretty well for some races, but the finishes have not been translating at times. But we go to a track where Nemechek's been solid. I don't think he's going to be a major contender for the win, but I look for Nemechek to have a decent car this weekend at Martinsville Speedway. Up next, up with the 43 car for Legacy Motor Club. This will once again be driven by Eric Jones. Now, Eric Jones has been having a lot of good finishes. He's having a better season in 2025 and is making the Legacy cars look a lot better currently at this moment. I can see Eric Jones sneaking inside another top 15 like he did at Homestead. I think the pace and speed will be there for Eric Jones for sure this weekend at Martinsville Speedway with Legacy. Up next, up with the 45 car for 23XI Racing. This will once again be driven by Tyler Reddick. Tyler Reddick had a little bit of bad performance for his standards, though he still scored a top 10 finish. And we go to a track where Reddick's been okay, but not been great. I think it's going to be still in the top 5 of the points, which is really, really good for him. He's also going to have O'Reilly Auto Parts and Mobil 1 as a sponsor for the weekend, but I think it's still not the pace and speed I think he's looking for to be a major factor, though I do think he'll have a solid run for sure, as I think he will contend for a top 10, but that's about it. Up next, I have the 47 car for Hayek Motorsports. This will once again be driven by Ricky Stenhouse Jr. This team has had some flashes this time to start 2025, and they were playing some strategy, but the strategy never really paid off for the team, and they faded back throughout the runs. I think Stenhouse could be in it for a decent run, though I think when we go to Bristol, I think he'll be in a much better position because he's been better at that track. We'll see what Ricky Stenhouse Jr. can do, though, as he looks to get another top 10 this weekend at Martinsville Speedway. Up next, I have the 48 car for Hendrick Motorsports. This will once again be driven by Alex Bowman. Alex Bowman had an amazing run at Homestead. He led 48 laps in the race and finished runner-up to the eventual winner, Kyle Larson. He's also sitting third in the points currently at the moment. Alex Bowman's had 5 top 10s, most of anybody in the field, and I think that the trend is going to continue in a positive factor for Bowman, as I think he will be a factor to win. It's been a couple years since he's won an oval race going back to 2022 at Vegas. I think that could definitely end for sure this weekend at Martinsville. Up next, we're talking about the 50 car for Team Amerivent. This will be driven by Burt Myers, who will make his points-paying NASCAR Cup Series debut this weekend at Martinsville. Burt Myers, of course, who did race at the Clash. He did get in the last chance qualifier, but unfortunately failed to make the overall event. I think this team could show some decent speed. They were really solid for their standards at the Clash, and I think it could be inside for maybe a solid run. I don't think he's going to be a factor for the win or any way like that, but I could see Burt Myers having a decent run for their standards this weekend at Martinsville. Up next up with the 51 car for Rick Ware Racing. This is once going to be driven by Cody Ware. There's really not much to say here. Cody Ware has been off to a really embarrassing start in 2025 and has been one of the worst performing drivers in the early portion of the season. I think that bad luck is going to continue, and I just don't think the pace and speed is going to be there for Cody Ware. I think more than likely Cody Ware is going to run outside of the top 20 like he has done a lot of this year, and I think it's going to be a struggle for the 51 team this weekend. Up next up, the 54 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. This is once going to be driven by Ty Gibbs. This team has been a disaster for their standards. Ty Gibbs still looking for his first top 15 finish of the season, as he only has one top 20 finish in the first 6 races. They've got to turn around really quickly. He's been all right here at the track, but he's not been great. And I think the bad luck might unfortunately continue for Ty, as I don't really see any momentum. I don't see any rhythm. They qualify well Homestead, but they haven't had the pace and speed to contend on a week-by-week basis. Up next up with the 60 car for RFK Racing. This will once again be driven by Ryan Preece. Ryan Preece coming off having back-to-back top 10 finishes after finishing in 9th place at Homestead. And we're going to a track where he's been very, very good at historically. I look for Ryan Preece to be a factor for a top 5 perhaps. He's been one of the stronger RFK cars to start the season, and I think that Ryan Preece is in for another really good run with RFK. I look for him to be a contender for a top 5 for sure this weekend at Martinsville. Up next up with the 66 car for Garage 66. Yes, this team is back this weekend, and Casey Mears is going to make his first NASCAR Cup Series start since the 2019 Daytona 500 with Premium Motorsports. I think that Casey Mears could be a driver that's interesting to get back behind the wheel. He's trying to reach 500 starts in the NASCAR Cup Series. I don't think he's going to be a contender any stretch of imagination. In fact, more than likely, this is going to be the slowest car in the field, unfortunately. But I think it's fun to see Casey Mears come back. It'd be cool if like some other drivers, like from the lower series, like a Sheldon Creed, Sam Mayer, maybe Haley Dean if she ever wanted to. Probably not, though. But Casey Mears is back. We'll see what he can do this weekend in the 66 car. Up next up is the 71 car for Spire Motorsports. This is once again driven by Michael McDowell. Michael McDowell's had an up and down start to 2025, though he had a lot of good runs early in the year. The first couple weeks, he of course won the pole at Vegas, but the last couple weeks have been a little bit up and down. We're going to a track where he's been okay, but he's not been great. I think it's going to be a little struggle for Michael McDowell, unfortunately, as I think more than likely Michael McDowell is going to run outside of the top 10 and probably struggle a little bit with the pace and speed. We'll see what he can do, though, as their speed and qualifying runs have been really strong to start off the early portion of 2025. Up next up is a 77 car for Spire Motorsports. This will once again be driven by Carson Hocevar. Carson Hocevar had another really good run going, but he still has 4 finishes outside the top 30. But it's not all been Carson Hocevar's fault, because he had an alternator issue at Homestead. I think Carson could be in for a good run, but he could be someone that might be one of the more aggressive drivers in the field. I think he's going to be very aggressive for sure. Hope he doesn't cause an incident or a scene throughout the weekend and can come out of the weekend very clean, considering Kyle Busch called him out this past week. We'll see what Hocevar can do here at Martinsville. Up next up is the 88 car for Trackhouse Racing. This one's going to be driven by Shane Van Gisbergen. Now, Shane Van Gisbergen's had a couple really bad races as of late. He had unfortunately got caught up in crashes at Phoenix, and of course had the issue at Vegas with the tires, and then he finished outside the top 30 at Homestead. We're going to track, though, he actually ran really well last year as he finished in 12th place. And with this track being very similar to Bowman Gray, he could be an outside factor for a top 10. I'm not expecting him to be a major factor for the win, but if the long run comes into play and tires matter a lot, like I think they're going to perhaps, I could see SVG running good. I think he's got to start showing some improvement on these ovals very, very soon. But he's also a rookie and has only made about 10 or 11 oval starts in his career up to this point. And finally, let's talk about the 99 car for Trackhouse Racing. This will once again be driven by Daniel Suarez. Once again, for the second week in a row, the 99 car was the fastest Trackhouse car. Suarez is starting to show a lot more speed, but he made another mistake, unfortunately, spinning out at Homestead. And we're going to track, unfortunately, where Daniel Suarez has not been that great. So I think that momentum is going to shift the wrong way, unfortunately, this weekend. I think it's going to be a little bit of struggle, sadly, for Daniel Suarez. This is a contract year, as there's a lot of talk about Connor Zilisch taking that seat. I think it'll be a little bit of struggle, unfortunately, for Suarez as he runs probably in the middle to back of the pack of the field this weekend at Martinsville Speedway. So, that is going to be for the interest video for the 2025 Cookout 400 at Martinsville. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Let's go to more of that and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. Who are your thoughts on the interest? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And who are the biggest surprises you expect this weekend at Martinsville? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. In a couple hours from now, you're going to see the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race picks video for Martinsville. And then tomorrow, you're going to see the Xfinity picks and also NASCAR news video, more than likely going out a little bit later in the morning. And then, of course, on Thursday, we're going to have Cup picks for Martinsville for the Cookout 400, and we'll have the paint scheme video as well. And then, of course, on Friday, we'll have a NASCAR news video, more than likely. We'll have the truck review and probably reactions to Xfinity Series qualifying. We got content coming on people like Haley Deegan, Shane Van Gisbergen, Collards, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, other people like Connor Zillish, Junior Motorsports, Eric Onroll, Chandler Smith, Sam Mayer, Sheldon Creed, all the good stuff. Cleats and Farland as well. We'll talk about that on the channel in the coming days and weeks. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, buddy.